How about we go and make asteroids from scratch, from start to finish in as quick as possible? How about that? Well, let's go through it. First thing we're going to need is some artwork. And the first thing I'm going to try and make is an asteroid shape. Here you will see how terrible I am at artwork. I cannot draw. But fortunately, certain tools allow us to put some little effects on, and it's not too bad. It's passable. Not yet, it isn't. But a few more effects, and we have something that resembles something like a basic asteroid. Yeah. I've already created the ship, so now I'm creating a new programming project in Visual Studios, and I am importing our two assets into our game. Brilliant. So we've got our two assets in the game. Now we also want a star field, and to do that I just need a blank 1v1 white texture. Let's do that now. So here I am, I'm just defining our star texture, and it's going to be a standard texture 2D, which is a standard texture which is only 1v1 pixel, and it's set to white. Now I'm going to create a list to contain all our star fields, create a max star field count at 500. We need to set the display size to 720p, and now I'm going to generate 500 random vector2 locations for our star field. After I've done that, we need to output our star field to the screen because, well, that's not going to work, is it? And we should have a star field, except it's not displaying the correct size because I'm an idiot. Well, everybody knew that. Anyway, now I've got it displaying the correct size. I fixed my bug. You can see we have a star field. It looks a bit boring though. So let's now make this star field move a little bit. I'm going to have a min and a max star speed. And now that I've done that, I'm going to get it implementing where the star field's actually going to, move. At this point I realise, oh great, I screwed up. This is not going to work. So I create myself a star field class, and I give myself a position, speed, and update for this class. Now I'm just building the class constructor, as you can see, and I'm just making it actually work with some random for the speed. And the random for the speed, all that's going to do is allow us to have two different random speeds for our star field, which will make it look like our star field has a bit of depth. Then we're going to make the star field actually update in the update field, and then, well, let's see how that runs, shall we? And hey, it's working. Oh, yeah, the stars are kind of disappearing. I know, let's fix that. So to fix that, all we need to do is to go here and to say that if the position.y is greater than the end of the screen, so 720, then position.y minus 720, and then basically loop it straight back up to the top. And now we can see, hey, it's working. We have a star field that is working for our Asteroids game. I'm just going to change now, a little bit of tweaking with the min and max values to see what our star field will look like. So I've changed some values, and I've also added some movement to the X side as well, and the result of that is this, where my star field is actually moving quite nicely and also slightly at an angle. So now what's next? Well, let's actually add our asteroids in next. Let's create our asteroid class first. Just create a new basic class. It's going to have an update and a draw in this class. We also need some variables like rotation, rotational speed, position, velocity, and of course the scale. Then in the update, we add the velocity to the position. We also then add the rotational speed to the rotation. We also then in the draw need to do some stuff, but in order to be able to draw anything, we need a sprite. So we're going to have a content load area, and we're going to make sure that this content load area actually gets loaded when the actual asteroid is created. And this is a static field that only will ever get loaded once. Once we've done that, we can finish writing our draw code out, and then we can actually see if this actually will output on the screen. Shall we do it? We'll create a test object. And what do you think the chances are that this test object is actually going to work? Edge your bets in now as we find out. And oh, look at that. No. Well, it's drawing a bit of an asteroid in the corner, but the position's not right. Let's just quickly go and have a look in the debug. Well, there we are. I'm not actually setting the position, so let me quickly go position equals position, like so. Run that, and our asteroid should have a position. It does. Brilliant. Right, so now our asteroid needs to have a random rotation, a random velocity, and also a random scale. So let's get that implemented. We need a random number generator, which is what I'm going to create now. And then with this random number generator, we can do a random.next double, and that will give us a value between 0 and 1. Then using things like multiply, add, and subtract, we can create upper and lower bounds for our values. So we have rotational speed, we have velocity, and we have scale, all of which are going to be our random numbers. So I'm just fixing off the problem that I've got with rotational speed, and that is all done. So, do you think it's going to work? Let's see if we do any better than last time. Now, we do need to fix the rotational speed being a bit much and whatnot, and I think the scale is too big at 1F. So what we'll do is we're going to change that down to, I'm going to go 5, and then make sure the bottom limit is 3. And then this, I'm going to go really slow rotation because, well, let's see. That should work nicely. Let's see how that works. So here we have our asteroid. It's got a slight bit of rotation like so. Brilliant. Now I want to make it have a random position every time. So to do that, I'm going to remove that and create a random for our input. And after doing that, we now have our random position set to anywhere on screen, and the asteroid is now going off screen. Now, like the original asteroids, when it goes off screen, I want it to wrap to the top of the screen, and just like we did with the stars code, I'm going to implement that same code into our asteroids. As you can see, I'm implementing this code. Now, you would think that I would just need to do this 1 to 80 for it to work when it's wrapping this way. However, I must remember that I also need to take off the width of the sprite. And I could also multiply by the scale to make it exactly precise onto what's happening, but that I'm not bothered by. I can't do this directly because it's not a variable, it's actually all this type of stuff here. So I'll just work around doing this and then I'll get back to you. Got that fixed, and that is literally going to be our first section. Then of course we need the same to be true when we go below or lower than the left half of the screen. So when we go off to the left, this time I also need to make sure that I'm checking the position.x. I'm also adding on the sprites.width, and then I can add on 1 to 80. I'm just going to now do the same for the y-axis. Right, I've done that. I'm hoping that this code will work. I've not tried it yet, so we need our asteroid to be on. It's got off on the left, and yeah, that didn't work. I think it's, oh my goodness, it's very random. Okay, let's debug this and figure out what went wrong. I had a couple of stupid moments here. As you will see, it took me quite a bit of time to debug this. This is incredibly sped up, but eventually I got it working. We have our ship texture, our basic ship texture. I've also added a laser texture and then some debris textures as well, so that we have something that we can animate a little bit to add a couple of effects. Next up is to create the ship class. So I'm going to create a very basic ship class just now. I've created our ship basic object or a basic class. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a ship to the game so that we can actually mess around with the ship and see if it's actually working. I've created our ship and I've called it player, and now I'm going to make sure that I create my new instance of our ship like so. Then I'm going to make sure that I load the content like this, and now I'm just going to add the update and the render. Now that I've done that, we will draw this, or should I say run this program, and then you can actually see our ship is drawing and looking quite good. Now we're going to make some movement to the ship with our left, right, forward, etc., and shooting of the laser. Before we can add the shooting of the laser, we need to add the laser class. So I'm going to add the laser class just now. I've gone and created my laser class. And now I'm going to jump to, well, I'm going to show you the adding of it to the game, the ship, etc. So what I have done is I have just added some laser code to our ship. We now have a array, or should I say a list of lasers. We have a handle input, which is where we're going to do all our keyboard inputs and gamepad inputs. We have our fire, which just adds a new laser, and then we update and draw each laser in turn. Now in the update, I just need to make sure that I handle the input like so that will run our input code. I also had to make sure that I draw my lasers from underneath my ship, not on top, because that would just look odd. Now we can actually see what happens when I run, and I've just got a bug that I need to fix right now. I fixed our bug, so now when I fire my laser, you can see a laser actually fires. Goes in completely the wrong direction, so let's fix that now. So now I can fire, looks really cool. It's firing at a decent speed. I now need to be able to rotate the ship and also increase the brightness of this laser fire. Next up is to improve the colour of our laser texture. I'm just going to increase the brightness, mess with the contrast a little bit. Now I want to add it so that we can actually rotate our ship around in the direction that we want to go. To do that, I'm going to use a spin function that I'm making, which is going to add a function to the rotation. And that is going to be just an offset. I'm going to use A and D to do this, and then depending on whether it gets a -1 or a 1 input, it will rotate in that direction. I'm doing that so that we can move to analog inputs in the future. Now we need to be able to move forward, so to do that I'm going to add a thrust function. I'm going to set that to the W key. And when we accelerate, we need to move in the direction that our ship is currently facing in. As well as that, I need to set a max rotational speed, and as you can see through the very quick snapshots you see, the ship is actually moving along quite nicely. So now I'm just adding some extra functions just to make this all run nice and look good, and that section is now done. Now we've got that working, we are going to go to our asteroid class, copy our position code so that when it goes off screen it comes back to the other side, it wraps round, and we are also going to paste that same asteroid code in, and other than the fact that my center variable is named differently, so I'm just going to replace these, and I don't have a scale either, so let's quickly get that all done. And then what we will have is we will have our code actually working, or should work because it's been tested, that we should wrap round like so. We do. So whichever way we go off screen, we wrap. Perfect. So I'm not going to make the laser wrap at all. It's not going to happen. Just our ship and asteroids to wrap. So now I need to add collisions to both the laser, which is actually working, which I may make fire a bit faster, and our asteroids. Now we need to increase the number of asteroids that we actually have, and I'm creating a list of asteroids. Then I'm going to set myself a max asteroid value, going to loop through, create the 10 asteroids that I'm using, because that's what I've set my max value to, and then just go through all the code and make sure that they all generate correctly. And now once I've done that, I'm creating a game instance so that with this singleton that I've created, we can actually access the asteroid field from within any class that we want. We're going to access it from the laser class first so that our lasers can actually collide with that. So I've just added a bounding box function to our asteroids, and then with the laser this will be the same. So our laser can detect an input with our asteroid. Now when our asteroid dies, I want it to respawn, so I'm creating a respawn function, doing some code changes so that when it respawns, it will respawn outside of the current area instead of inside it. And once that all works, we actually have ourselves a ability to destroy asteroids. Shall we see how good it actually looks? And this is where we are now. I can fire, up to 3 lasers at once. If I try and fire any more than 3, it doesn't work. We also now need to keep track of score though. So to do that, I'm going to add a font to the game. I'm going to spend a bit of time searching for a decent font, and then we will output the score. Right, I've added a score. Score goes up when you shoot an asteroid. Output's there. Font's not the best, but it'll do for now. Next up is a game over screen and the ability for the game to be restarted. Our game is now functional. Let's see how good it looks. Here it is. It starts off immediately into a game. We have asteroids flying around. We die. We get a game over screen. I can press spacebar again to start a new game, and we can try and beat our top score. Now, there are lots of things to do to polish this game. Polish is one of the things that takes probably longest about a video game. It would probably take me as long again, if not longer, to get the game polished and ready if I was going to release it than it would just to this little thing. And this will only be a little mobile game at best. Sound effects, particle effects, some other visual effects, all to add that sense of polish to the game. For now, I'm going to leave it here. I hope you enjoyed the video, just showing you basically making this game from scratch without using an engine like Unity or anything else. This is purely from scratch, coding the engine myself. Hope you enjoyed it. I may add more to it. I may even do some polish if there's enough interest, or I may just do another one of these simple games, whether it be Snake or something like that. Let me know in the comments.